Teachers of Reddit, what is the funniest thing that one of your students have gotten in trouble for where you had to pretend to be mad? I once had a student, high school, consistently wear a large Pop-Tart box on his head and proclaim himself the Pop-Tart King. Don't worry, I'm sure he's worthy as he was most likely toasted. This really shy 6-year-old girl, who never participated in anything and always kept to herself, worked up the courage one day to get in the ridiculously long line to play box ball, or foursquare, or whatever your regional name for it is, with the big kids. Keep in mind I've barely heard this girl utter 3 words total. She waits about 20 minutes until she's finally up. Kid in box 4 checks it to her. She checks back, and he spikes it right on her foot and it goes flying off. She is now out. She leans her head back and screams, "Oh goddammit." I had to let the other counselor take care of the situation. I ran away so the kids couldn't see me hysterically laughing. She waits about 20 minutes until she's finally up. You need another foursquare court, that's a ridiculous wait. When I started teaching, I inadvertently got myself into an incredibly low-income school. While this itself is not bad, there is an unfortunate correlation between low-income schools and really bad leadership. It was a really stressful year for me. I came in mid-year, and was the 3rd teacher that those kids had that year. They didn't trust anybody. 1st grade, I spent most of that year solving behavioral issues and building relationships. One of the few highlights, at one point, I was talking to a financial secretary for a second while the kids stood in line. Financial secretaries basically run the school, by the way, so it's good to get them on your side. This didn't deter my kids from acting up while we spoke. Next thing I know, the kids are all chanting something and one of my little Latino boys is crying. Jesus Christ, it was only like 3 seconds. Me, what happened? Why is Pedro crying? African American boy, because they called him the N-word. The frick? I'm so confused. Financial secretary, what? Get over here. Whisper in my ear what he said. African American boy, hesitantly, clearly uncomfortable using this word, as it's a bad word. They called him a nerd. I had to turn away. I taught 1st grade, and had a group of children come to report another child's use of the F word. After discussing with the little sailor appropriate language for school, I discovered that the F word was fat. This doesn't count because I didn't get mad, but it was so funny I had to leave the room to recompose myself when I heard the story. I teach kindergarten, and I had a rare opportunity to teach the same class of kids twice. Last year, my teaching partner got pregnant and, due to some unfortunate complications, had to take some time off early into the pregnancy. We explained this gently to the kids so as not to get them too upset. This year, I get some gnarly food poisoning and have to take a few days off. One of the kids thought that, due to my potbelly and sudden absence, that I must be pregnant. 2. I'm a guy. He was going to write me a letter, but he didn't know how to write. Time to go on a diet. My friend's dad has a similar belly, and he said a kid ran up to him one day and asked when he's giving birth. If I recall correctly, he said something like anytime now. Had a 2-hour study hall with 40 kids. Study hall monitor demanded complete silence. 2 students would quietly talk and after the 3rd or 4th time of being told to stop, got split up. They then spent the next month or so learning sign language, and would sign to each other across the room. This absolutely pee the little sound Nazi monitor off. I could tell she was impressed, yet furious that her power had been so creatively undermined. Her reaction was nothing short of wow. These little shoots actually learnt sign language just to spite me for 2 hours out of the day. She ended up not allowing singing between students, which was upheld by the administration after that kinda blew up a bit. Whoa, they learned an entire language to communicate. If that's not ambition, I dunno what is. I'm a martial arts instructor. One day I was having the kids work a drill on back fist punch with their partners. This isn't an issue because we always make sure we tell the kids that this is just for them to practice and not make contact with. So this one kid is really having a tough time with his punch, so I go over to him, give him a few pointers and walk over to the next team. I hear his partner say, "Why are you so bad at this? This is the most basic drill." So the kid punches him in the face. The reason I was happy about this is, 1. I don't take bullies in my classes, and 2. He had perfect technique for that punch. Kids at my old school lined up on the playground before school. We'd meet our class outside and let them into the building. I usually waited to take my kids in until everyone was standing quietly. 34th graders can be crazy loud in the halls if they're all talking. One morning there was a commotion toward the back of the line. I did my usual. I'm waiting until we can be good examples for the kindergartners thing, but the back of the line didn't settle. I walked back there to find boy with a 14-inch long carrot, with green stem still attached, hitting girl with it. After a brief discussion we established that although carrots were excellent snacks they could not be used as weapons. He gave me the carrot to hang onto until lunchtime. Weirdest contraband I ever had in my desk drawer. Nice try, Elma. A student made a family crest in my student teaching for a project about feudalism. Most of the crest was a pink, detailed picture of a vulva labia vagina. WE. It had been hanging on the wall for a week when I noticed. I had a similar thing when the art group decorated the hall with their pictures of candlelight. Many vulvas. I taught high school. The door to my classroom had a floor-to-ceiling window directly next to the door. One day, I look over and one of my favorite seniors is standing by the window, waving to me. I look back to what I was doing and then look back to see him straight up mooning me. He got suspended, and I called him NASA for the rest of the year. When I was in high school, one of the grade 12 boys flashed his boxes on stage at the graduation ceremony. Same guy also stole a pair of fake teeth from the drama room and ran around asking everyone to touch his titties. A student of mine last year missed the final 2 weeks of his senior year after letting off stink bombs at the school football game. I know I was supposed to be mad, but as his chemistry teacher, I couldn't help but be proud that he made them himself. I teach elementary music. We were playing with maracas in one of my first grade classes. Before handing them out, explained how to use them and under no circumstances were they to bang them on anything. Well, naturally, I have them out and the first thing they do is bang them together. On the wall, on the floor, literally anything. This one boy hits his two maracas together and it just explodes. Tiny rocks and shrapnel fly everywhere and cover the floor and the other students. He started crying. The class was in Pandemonium. It was a hilarious scene. I had to pretend to be mad because he blatantly didn't follow the rules. I wasn't too harsh though because he cried so hard. He felt really horrible and I felt like it was punishment enough. But man, I was dying. I just wanted to laugh so hard. I was hosting a current events Jeopardy game last Friday and one category, called Odds and Ends, is essentially just random viral Facebook videos. The students take the game pretty seriously so the room is silent while I read the question. A group of wild wats, aggressive and territorial, have been harassing a neighborhood in New York to the point that people are afraid to leave their homes. Before the students can even buzz in with a guess, a student in the back casually shrugs and says, "Probably black people." The room erupts in laughter and it took everything in me not to join in. I'm white and the student is black, so I really wasn't sure how to react, punishment wise. If anyone has any advice on that, I would love to hear it. I'm a school psychologist and the kids have to walk by my office to go to lunch. One day I had a kindergartner say to his teacher, "My daddy taught me what BR and you're one of them." I died laughing. I would not have been able to discipline that kid. While I find the comment extremely hilarious, it's also kind of sad. My sister-in-law is an aide for a class full of behavioral challenged kids. Most of them have anger issues or just act out in really weird ways. One day on a class break, she took a bunch of the kids to the bathroom. She didn't know that one of the kids wasn't supposed to be using the same restroom as everyone else. After about 5 minutes she has a couple of kids missing and hears yelling from the boys' bathroom. She goes in and one boy has his pants around his ankles standing by a urinal. The other kid is pulling on his foreskin yelling, "Why do you have this?" One of the funniest things she's ever seen. She takes that kid to the nurse's office to use the restroom now. WTF. Kindergarten teacher here. Last year I had a 5-year-old run up to me and very emphatically tell me that Billy said frick. I suppress the urge to smirk and tell him, "Well, now you've said it, so let's all just make a promise that no one should say any bad words anymore." He looked at my rather perplexed at with the utmost sincerity goes, "But I didn't say frick." Billy said frick. I had to look away to hide my laugh. Snitches get stitches. A kid I hated was being a total C in the class. I took him outside and shouted at him. I was a young teacher then, before I realized losing your crap just made things worse. I accidentally spat on him as I was shouting. He calmly looked me in the eye and said I asked for the news, not the weather. I couldn't keep it together. Laughed my head off. Shook his hand and he never misbehaved again. That's when I learnt shouting at kids never works. On the contrary, that worked very well. Teacher here. The school was next to a supermarket and some kids stole a huge industrial size bag of onions and pelted each other with them on the tennis courts. The smell was so bad we had to evacuate a whole block. The headmaster called an emergency meeting and declared, I need to know WHO are the onion throwers? Thanks to their actions this school now bans onions on the premises. I had to hide my face, I was crying. And not from the onions. The birth of our own yarn had. We, as in, the entire class, always stole each other's pens and other stuff when one of us had to do an exercise at the board. Our physics teacher was kinda annoyed by that because it was really childish, stupid, and we were all 18 years. One fateful day a student had to come to the blackboard. After a few steps he turned back, said something along the lines of not this time, and took everything on his desk with him. All his pens, his books, his notebooks, everything. Teacher was kinda rolling his eyes, but whatever. Now we were not this easily outdone, and as he was doing whatever calculation he was supposed to do, the front row students tilted his chair backwards so that the row behind could catch it with their feet, to avoid making a sound, and drag it backwards. When he came back from the blackboard, looking super proud, we all knew it was because he thought he had outwitted us, not because he'd solved the problem at the board. He reached his place and exclaimed incredulous, "What the heck guys? Where is my chair?" Even the teacher smiled. I taught first grade. We had to show a mandatory YouTube video on the first day about sharing and being nice. It was very lame. It had really annoying puppets and just sucked. Well, when the video was done, there was a moment of complete silence in the classroom, and this adorable little boy who barely spoke English just said, "What the heck?" I had to talk to him about his language, but he seriously just voiced what we were all thinking. I cannot stop laughing. First grade teacher here. Not a teacher, but one my fellow students hadn't done his maths homework. As punishment, the teacher made him come up and solve an equation on the board. Then another teacher walked past the classroom window, peered through, then got his marker pen and wrote the answer backwards on the window so we could all see it. So a funny end to the punishment, as even the teacher was laughing at the randomness. The hero we need. I saw a group of students standing around an umbrella. I sternly asked what they were doing, and one of them said the umbrella was wet. This was the last period of the day. The owner of the umbrella had been at school all day, so there's no reason their umbrella should be wet unless someone was up to some shenanigans. I went over to the group and asked how the umbrella got wet. One of the students held out a plastic toilet. I frowned and told him to give it to me. He did, and I looked at it. Then I opened the toilet seat, and I promptly got hit in the eye by a stream of water. My students were trying so hard to stifle their giggles, because they knew they were in trouble. I couldn't help it. I started to laugh. My students took that as permission to laugh as well. After a few minutes, I told them that I wasn't mad about getting hit in the eye with water, because I did that to myself, but they were in trouble for playing around during instructional time. I didn't get him in trouble, but while writing an essay about apartheid on a test, a student raised his hand and asked if he could use the phrase "eat crap and die." Too curious to resist, I asked him how he planned to use it. His response? The white people in South Africa basically thought that the blacks could eat crap and die. I had a question about colonists adopting the Declaration of Independence, and a kid asked if because King George III was a douche was an okay answer. Was teaching students about the 4 theories of art criticism, and since they had a hard time remembering the process, we decided to come up with a mnemonic as a class. The letters were D, A, I, and E. As students were passing up their anonymous index cards with their suggestions, I was reading a few and came upon "dat but I eat" and promptly lost my crap laughing. Never found out who it was, but it kept the class in a good-natured suspense when they asked what was so funny. To this day I still crack up about it. One of my friends was being formally observed by the superintendent during a high school English class in an older school building. She was distracted because the floor was shaking, and she finally said something like somebody is jiggling their leg and shaking the floor. Please stop. The superintendent sheepishly admitted that he was the culprit. I was actually the student. To make a long story short, a teacher with a grudge walked in on me, 125 lbs. Toss a wadded up ball of paper at my best friend, 250 lbs. She just sort of decided we were fighting and demanded we go to the headmaster's office to explain ourselves. She wouldn't take no for an answer. The headmaster's secretary put on a very stern face when we got there and told us he'd already been informed and was expecting us. The headmaster just glared when we walked in and in his most serious voice told me, Pironius, you should know better than to beat up on Robert. You could have been seriously hurt if he decided to fight back. Then he started laughing and asked what really happened. Once we'd explained, he gave us some coffee and had us sit around for about 5 minutes before leaving with the instruction that we should try to look suitably chastised. Cool guy headmaster. I'm not a teacher but was a student of this teacher, and he said that one of the hardest time for him to hold back his laughter was when a friend of mine in his class told another student to suck his tit. The teacher didn't hear it at first and asked, "What did you say?" My friend responded loudly for the whole class to hear. "Oh, I'm sorry Mr. V. I just told Alex to suck my tit." At my school, they keep a box of donated clothes in the office for kids who need them. Usually it's because they spilled their lunch all over themselves, tore something, or are out of dress code. They are to be washed and returned the next day. I had a kid come up to me right after his pay class and ask to go get a new shirt. His shirt seemed fine from where I stood, so I asked him why. "This one smells too much like weed." I stepped towards him and confirmed his assessment. "How did that happen?" I asked. "UHH. My brother smokes dope and my shirt was in his room last night. I wrote him a pass to the office and called the principal to give her a heads up. They found half a joint in his back pocket. Turns out he fired it up when he paused during a mile run in pay." I'm a coach, and we have this fun thing called question of the day, which was who was your favorite villain? So we asked some second and third graders who their favorite villain was, and one of the boys, with a cheery look in his eyes, proclaimed his favorite villain was Hitler. Well, like all good villains, he didn't see himself a bad guy though he was doing the right thing. Still in college getting my teaching degree, but once I was working in a classroom in a mild special ed classroom, so like mild autism, ADHD, behavioral issues, mild learning disabilities, etc. In a high school, teacher introduced me and the other ed students and told us to say what subject grades we want to teach. So I say I want to teach art at the high school level and this kid goes, "You wanna teach high school? Why? We're the worst." It was just the funniest thing ever and the teacher was so upset about it, but inside I was dying of laughter. They all say that. I taught 9th grade and my students would hang out in my room at lunch and complain about how all of their classmates were the worst, and why would I ever want to teach any of them? I would just laugh at them. Not a teacher but a direct support professional for people with disabilities. One of my co-workers is universally hated by the clients and other staff, and one of my clients one day threw a giant exercise ball at him and told him to shut up. It was so hard for me to be like, "Okay, now you have to apologize because that wasn't nice," even though I thought it was freaking hilarious and deserved. I can just imagine a deaf guy launching a giant medicine ball at a guy and going, "Shut up, I'm tired of listening to you." I had a grade 6 student tell me to get fricked because I had the audacity to ask him to do his work and stop being disruptive. He then gets up and starts to walk out of the room. This is his go-to move whenever he's work avoiding. He opens the door to the classroom and leaves the room. He now tries slamming the door to punctuate his exit. The corner of the mat we use to wipe our feet as we come in is slightly inside the door frame, so try as he might he couldn't actually slam it. I'm ignoring his behavior because I've seen it so many times and I'm just carrying on. He's now standing outside the door with his head poking in. He goes, "Excuse me, mister, I'm trying to make a point but the door won't slam." So slam. He yells it out so loudly and then carefully lets the door go. I was trying not to laugh the whole time. He couldn't slam the door and him yelling out slam was the icing on the cake. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. It made me forget what a pain he was being. He was annoying every single day, but he had a great personality and often made me laugh when he was acting out. Back in high school, student, there was this freshman kid that used to sit in the desk in front of me in my Spanish class. He'd always spin around, steal my pens, and stick them up his nose. He was always a distraction. Class clown. Irritated the heck out of the teacher. One day I'd had enough. I bought one of those electric shock prank pens. The ones that shock you when you click it. The next day I just waited. And yep, sure enough, he grabs it, sticks it up his nose. Click. Poor guy fell out of his desk, rolled around the floor. Teacher looked back, snapped at him for being distracting, and I never had any repercussions. He never stole my pens again. I've had my fair share of class clowns over the years. This year, I have a student that hates that we have the last lunch in my 4th period class, so every day he makes up raps about being hungry and waiting for lunch while he does his artwork. At the most it's distracting, but still makes me laugh every time. His most recent rap was about chicken nuggets. A coworker of mine had students that turned all of his desks upside down while he was on hallway duty between classes. So when he walked in they were standing around with upside down desks. He was not happy about it, but it was so hilarious. I'm a student art teacher of 16 plus kids. The art rooms have a strict no food policy. Anyways, all of the kids I teach are talented and genuinely lovely kids, cheeky but do their work and aren't awful. I'm sat with one group going over their work and I smell coffee. Not unusual in art rooms because we use it to stain paper. Then I hear rattling and a minor commotion. I look over to see one of my students handing out cups of coffee from a flask with many cups and biscuits to other students. It was so out of the blue and just funny that I told them to hurry up and hide the evidence before someone saw and to not do it again. Had a biscuit too. TLDR. A student basically had a picnic mid-lesson. I'm a student, but this just made me think of the time I brought pancake mix and griddle and just started making pancakes in the middle of class. My teacher was surprised but dropped the whole lesson, put on a movie and let us eat pancakes. We glued a chair to the wall of one of the classrooms. Teacher just looked at us, gave the what the frick look, then laughed and yelled at us to take it down. During tests, students are obviously not allowed to speak because I can't know if they are cheating or not. I once caught a kid using some kind of sign language to communicate with his friend, and when I told him to stop he said but I was not speaking. I sent him to the last row of the room, but couldn't give him detention to retake his test like I should have, and actually had to open a book in front of my face so the class wouldn't see me laughing. My school had the rule no communicating with one another during exams to prevent this sort of thing. It also covered tapping and passing of notes, both of which had happened. I had a student whose name started with a D, but all the kids called him Big Dude. Convo went like this. Miso D, should I call you D or Big Dude? D, you can call me Big Dude, but usually the white girls just call me Big D. Me to the office D. 6th grade. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.